Hello, I'm Adam Riley. I'm excited to be here today sharing with you some of the new features in Enso 2025.1. So this is just released and packed full of new features and ease of use improvements. I'm going to share some of those with you today. So first up, I'm sat here in my Enso team folder. So this is my cloud account, and this is my shared folder that I can work on workflows with my team. And if I go into my projects folder inside here, and I've got this end of month report. So this is a workflow that I want to run every month. So it's going to generate various statistics and sales reports. And now if I come across to the right hand side, I have this scheduler pane. I can do new schedule, and I wanted to schedule, so I want to run on the first every month. So first one's going to be June the 1st. I wanted to repeat monthly, so I've got various different options of periods for the schedule, but this one every month, and then I hit submit. And that's now scheduled that workflow to run in the Enso cloud. So every month that will run and generate my report, so you can see the schedule there. Sticking in my Enso cloud account, I'm going to come back up and go into this other folder called New Features. And in here I've got a workflow called New Features. And this is a workflow. I'm going to show you some of the things we've added. So the next thing to show is version history. So this is great for when we're working on a workflow as a team, keeping track of who's made what changes. So you can see for this particular workflow, if I come down to the bottom, so Ned originally created this workflow, and then I've made subsequent changes to it since then. And for each of these, we can click on see changes, and we can see what was changed in each version. So we can see the original version that Ned created was basically an empty workflow. He just put a comment on that said, let's use this workflow to showcase all the cool new 2025.1 features. And then in this change, you can see I added an example of the Table.offset feature. And similarly, we can do that. So if we go up to the latest one and see there, you can see in this one, so now the workflow's got a bit bigger as I've added things to it. But again, you can see this particular change, I added an example of the distance feature. So you can see the group of components there, and it's been added into the main component. So great for keeping track of what changes. So giving that full audit trail, we don't have to go back. You can sort of restore these versions if you need to, duplicate, you can take copies of them at that point in time. So really good for keeping track of all your workflows. Next thing we've got, continuing down this right hand pane, is now inside the cloud folder, you're able to view the documentation. So we've had documentation on our workflows for a while now. This change means you can read the workflow from outside the workflow, so you can quickly look through all of the workflows you've got in a shared folder and check out the documentation to make sure you're opening the one that you want. So next thing to do is to dive into the graph editor and look at some of the cool new features we've added in there. So that workflow was stored in the Enso cloud, but now I've opened it, it's now open on my local machine. So I'm taking use of all the power of my local development environment, but it's just stored in the Enso cloud, and obviously can be scheduled in that cloud. So this workflow I've used to sort of showcase some of the new features we've added. You can see sort of the list of them down the side here. This workflow will be available to download from our community once I posted this video. So we've already looked at the cool new cloud features. So next thing is the graph editor improvements. So first big change you'll notice is a new component browser. So if I just open this empty group of components, just so we can have a blank screen. And then, so we've moved the add an input component button up here, sort of front and center, so it's much easier to find. And you can see here on the input component, we've now got these categories because we have a huge amount of components, and we had feedback that it was difficult to always find the right component you wanted. So we now categorize them down this left-hand side, so you can look at all the different ones. We've got the file connectors, got all our database connectors, our web API connectors, Enso Cloud features. We've also, for each sort of type of components, this input components, we have a list of suggested ones. So these are sort of the most commonly used ones. So data read, and you'll notice just down at the bottom, there's a little sort of one-line sentence about what this particular component does, so just help you find that right component. And still, you can search. So if I type in file in here, we get all the components that are related to files. So yeah, still just much easier to find the component you're looking for. So coming back up to the parent workflow, the next thing to talk about is this top bar. So we've made some sort of cleanup up here. So I've already mentioned we've moved this, add the input component up to the top. We've got a new menu on the left hand side, which just gives you a full description of what all these controls do and the keyboard shortcuts for ease of discoverability. And the other thing we've done is move the zoom controls directly onto the graph editor background. So this is just, we've got feedback from users. It's really useful to have easier access to the zoom controls, so they've moved there. Workflow documentation has continued to move on in this release, so you'll notice now there's a new toolbar across the top of the workflow documentation, so you can set text styles, italic, bold, insert hyperlinks, insert images such as this one at the top. So just continuing to build out that rich functionality, being able to document your workflow. Small change, but one that I'm quite like about, on the join tool, we've just added on the here these little icons just on the left hand side, so just to help with that remembering which join is which type. So it's a small thing, but just one of those ease of use improvements we'd like to make each release. So then moving on to new component features, we've added a number of new components in 25.1. First up is generate rows. So if I open this group of components, we can take a look at that component. So generate rows is great for creating duplicate copies of existing rows of data. So this is great if you need to sort of create some scaffold or other forms of data. So here's an example. We've got some employees. So first and last name, we've got the start date and the number of days they worked. And what we want to do is generate a row of data for each day that they work. So in its basic mode, we can just create a constant number of rows. So generate rows from 1 to 7, so we get 7 copies of each of those rows. So we've got Ava 7 times, Bella 7 times. So that's useful in some circumstances, so if we want 1 per day of the week, for example. But then it gets more useful is where we get to use the fields on the incoming data. So this day's worked, so now we're taking that as the incoming field. So Ava gets 3 rows because she worked for 3 days, and Bella gets 5 rows. And then what's actually more common is to use a date-based row. So actually we want a row for each day, and we want the date. And we can do that by using this date range, and we can actually use formulas inside of the end date. So you get a row for each date and the day that row is. So really useful for, as I say, scaffolding type use cases. The next one that we have is a offset component. So this one is really good when you're trying to do formulas over multiple rows of data. This was possible in previous versions of Enso, but it involved using a number of tools to get the result, whereas this now all works in a single tool. So what offset does basically is create a copy of your data. So here we have some sales data for each quarter. It creates a copy of that data shifted down. So you can see here the offset of sales is shifted down, and then it allows us to do calculations such as change in sales, as you can see here. The other thing you can do is use this directly in the set expression. So part of the Enso expression language, you can do sales minus offset of sales -1, and you can do that in a single step without even using the offset component. So really useful for multi-row star calculations. Next, I want to show you some improvements we've made to regular expression support, both in expressions and in the tools. So if I open this next group of components, so we've added support for regular expressions inside the Enso expression language. So now you can do things like this one here. So we've got text replace, and so the syntax is r /, then the regular expression, and then a backslash at the end. So this particular regular expression is looking for anything enclosed in a pair of double quotes. So, for example, this path, and then it's replacing it with the same thing, but now surrounded in stars. So that's, yeah, really useful. Again, you could do that in a component before, but now you're able to do it in the expression. A new component we've added is regex match inside a filter. So now you're able to filter on a regular expression. So this particular example, we're filtering down on anything that matches with the word Enso. So 4 of the rows in that incoming data contain Enso, so that filters down. So really powerful for filtering your data. And again, we can use these two features together. So you can see over here, just zoom out so we can see this one better. So I can use a regex match in a set expression combined with that r / syntax, and we can create a new column down the right hand side that says whether these match or don't. So again, really powerful, really useful. Oh, I've left that in an error state. Let's remove that. The next thing on my list is scatterplot improvements. So here's a quick example of that. So I've got some CSV data which is showing its heart rate per minute against music tempos. This is from an exercise class, and we're able to plot those in a scatter graph and see a rough correlation between the music tempo and how fast the person's heart is going who's exercising. Then the last new component to show you is the geodistance component. So if I open up this group of components, so this workflow is using the IP API, web API. So it takes the IP address and it will return you the location roughly in the world of that IP address. So I've got 2 IP addresses going in here, which resolve to places in Montreal and New York City, complete with lat and longs. And then I can use the geodistance tool to calculate the distance between those 2 points. So given 2 IP addresses, I can calculate the distance. So we can see here the distance between Montreal and New York is 339 miles. So useful if I want to do any checking for unusual IP addresses, say that are outside of my country. So small step, but sort of a start of our spatial capabilities, and look out for more of that going forwards. So this was my overview of 25.1. Thank you for watching. This will be posted, this workflow will be posted on the community, and there'll be a number of follow-up videos sort of diving into some of these components in more detail in weeks to follow. But if you haven't, I encourage you all to download it now from the website and give it a try yourself. Thank you for watching.